Please pray with me. Speak to our hearts, Holy One, your message of love and new life. Amen. Most of us either recall this amazing psalm because we were taught it, or because we've heard it recently or mostly at funerals. Psalm 23 has a familiarity and assurance that even the most skeptical cannot ignore. And John metaphorically continues the thought in his gospel. Here we are, the fourth Sunday after commemorating the resurrection of Jesus. It's known as Good Shepherd Sunday. Does anyone here have a memory of a shepherd? I mean, a real person who we actually saw tending sheep. Not so much these days, unless you're in the Middle East or parts of Europe. Some of us may have a memory of a picture that we saw in our grandparents' home, and it seemed like it was always grandparents' home. I'm not sure why it seemed that the picture of Jesus as shepherd tending sheep was always hanging on a living room wall. Or we may have seen it in a church stained glass window. There was an image of a gentle, meek, and mild white guy with a shepherd's crook looking wistfully over several sheep. Or perhaps it is a picture of a sheep around his shoulders. These images stay with us, and they leave an impression. We all need a gentle, caring figure in our lives. The image represents the same Jesus that we speak about throughout the year, and whom Michael has been reflecting on over the past few post-resurrection Sundays. It seems like such a jolt to our collective systems that we recall the death and the burial. Then we have Jesus back with his disciples as he confronts their disbelief as to who he was. You see, over the life of Jesus, not only had he been for his followers their Lord, their master, their rabbi, miracle worker, but he was also their shepherd. When they wandered in disbelief in areas that they should not have been, Jesus pulled them back from the brink of self-destruction. When they doubted, he tried to clarify things for them. When they needed reassurance, he was reaffirming. Long before the ministry of Jesus, however, the psalmist likened God to a shepherd, one who supplied all that we could ever want or need. What does the psalm mean for the Jews, who were far more culturally aware of this setting than us? In my previous parish, I recall the visit of a Reformed rabbi who told us about the Jewish interpretation of Psalm 23. She said, "This psalm is not read during the liturgical year as we read it. It is reserved for two important occasions. One, at a Jewish funeral, and two, at the end of every Sabbath. That means every Saturday. It's sung in sadness because the Sabbath is ending, but with comfort knowing that there is nothing to fear, the Sabbath will return." I encourage you to re-examine this poem with me. It covers such major aspects of our lives. Verses 1 and 2 refer to the outdoors. Verse 6, the indoors. Verse 2 relates to peace, and verse 4 to danger. There is the possibility of evil in verse 4, but the prospect of good in verse 5. And there is a time of restoration and reinvigoration in verse 3. All of these literary facets of this lyrical gem are focused on God, whose tender care, ceaseless vigilance, and perpetual presence is life-giving. Both the psalm and the gospel reading remind us that as shepherd, God is good. As shepherd, God protects. As shepherd, God guards. The main thought is that God is our guide and protector through whatever life throws our way. In good times, such is easy to embrace. But in pandemic times, times of sickness, lost jobs, economic strain, mental health concerns, it's more difficult for many to fathom, and I get that. But what if we take another look at this poem? The psalmist David himself, a shepherd, knew as we know that shepherds' sole lonely existence is to care for their flocks. Having the geographic knowledge to locate grass, meaning food, and water indicates that they were in touch with nature. They appreciated the earth. There is a profound relationship between shepherds, their sheep, and the land. We see similar respect for the land from our indigenous peoples. Our reading from the apocryphal book of Sirach also reminds us of the power of nature. Psalm 23 provides us with a vision of spiritual serene waters and pastures. I ask you, how many of us have laid on our backs in a field or on a grassy hill and simply looked at the sky? Oh, that feeling of being carefree. I think that the psalm encourages us to conserve and preserve pastures and land for our children, for our families, our communities, in the here and now, and for the generations to come. Weekly, our land acknowledgement reminds us that we have work to do. On Thursday, April the 22nd, the world acknowledged Earth Day. A journalist appropriately wrote an article that some of you may have seen. He correctly stated that we need more than one day. We need every day. The theme this year was Restore Our Earth. The psalm says that God restores our soul. The earth is part of our soul. If we don't take care of it, it will die, and so will we. We are reminded that the Creator leads us. Pause. No, I want to make it much more personal and assuring for me, and you could say it with me also. The Creator leads me beside still waters and restores my soul. Two important components of life in addition to air are the land and the water. There is little in life that is relaxing and refreshing as water, still water. It lulls us to a peaceful rest. That's just how we like our life to be. But then there are storms that disturb that still water. It's still the same water, just a different response. That too is life. Do you know that 71% of the earth is water? That 96.5% is ocean or salt water? That only 2.5% of all water on the planet is fresh water and drinkable? And only 1% of all fresh water is easily accessible in rivers, lakes, and streams. The rest is stuck in glaciers and snowfields. Surprisingly, of some 7.8 billion people in our world, only 6 billion have access to clean water. Shockingly, some 785 million people lack access to clean water. That means 1 person in every 10 does not have safe drinking water. We don't have to look far. Ask marginalized people in Flint, Michigan, who for years had brown water flowing from their corroded pipes as they got sick and died. The government did little. Closer to home, ask our indigenous friends. 6 years ago, there were 126 drinking advisories in their communities. The numbers have dropped to 33, but that is still too many in 2021, when we are privileged to turn on our taps and see clear, clean water. Our concerns, however, go beyond water. What about air pollution, light pollution, soil contamination, and noise pollution? We are told that because of COVID-19 and people not driving as much, air pollution has dropped. Yet, climate change is still evident. The results: higher temperatures, more droughts, wilder weather, changing rain and snow patterns, melting glaciers, shrinking sea ice. Since the late 19th century, our surface temperature has risen 1.2 degrees Celsius. Canada has been accused of trailing other industrialized countries in climate action. Our federal environmental minister knows that there is much to be done to drastically reduce emissions. Last Thursday, in his climate summit, which included 40 world leaders, US President Biden stated, "The work ahead," and I quote him, "is a moral imperative, an economic imperative, a moment of peril." What can we do? God's the shepherd in the Old Testament. Jesus is God the shepherd as a member of the Trinity in the New Testament. We are told that we are the sheep. Really? Do we want to be called sheep when we consider their characteristics? Supposedly dumb, not knowing their way, having a herd mentality, and needing a consistent presence to guide them? They do, however, know to avoid uncertain, dark places. As we see the effects of climate change, we are experiencing some environmentally dark situations. As we are reminded today in word, thought, and song, we are indeed sheep. And as sheep, we too have responsibility. As followers of God the Creator, we are obligated to care for our environment because our relationship with God is inextricably tied to our stewardship over what God owns and has given us control over from the dawn of time. As a city gardener on a tiny postage stamp lot, I find that challenging. I find it mind-boggling and exhilarating at the same time. In some amazing way, we have opportunities to continue to be co-creators with God. Think about that. Co-creators with God. We heard what Minister Gould said. We know what we read in the media. On a daily basis, things are not as good as we desire. The opposite of creating is environmental demise and eventual demolition. We see that daily. We will hear more about improvement strategies from Susan, our Eco Justice team lead. So please stay with us until the announcements. Politics aside, all of us have a moral obligation to better our environment. We are trying to play our part here at Incarnation with our geothermal project led by Mac and others, our property overview by Bob and James, Lisa's support, our grounds team led by Mary and others, the leadership of wardens, and our relationship with Halton Environmental Network. I know that I have left someone out, and I'm sorry, but bear with me. Remember, I'm still new here. We can give ourselves a pat on the back, but there is more to do for the love of creation. We care because God calls us to be stewards. We have to address and try to right our environmental wrongs. We must not let political and economic maneuvering usurp God's command to us from the start of creation. For us to take care of our world, we've not been doing so good. And as God continues to give opportunities to lead us beside those still waters and green pastures, we are encouraged to accept our roles as co-creators, led by the Good Shepherd. May it be so. May it be so.